In every generation, there is a chosen one. She alone will stand against the vampires, the demons, and the forces of darkness. She is the Slayer.
We shot this at a graveyard in Hollywood. We shot there all season. Big deal. Meant going out all night till sunrise, a lot of times. This was the first season when we still had that kind of energy. It's in the second season that we actually built our own graveyard in our parking lot that we've been using for several seasons, which made our lives a whole lot easier, but doesn't give you the scope that you get from this one. It's a really beautiful place. It looks great. Back once again at the credits, and having praised Nerfherder for their beautiful theme and how much fun it was, I do want to point out that if you listen carefully, it does sort of go off the beat about halfway through. It loses tempo. They came in and recorded it really quickly, and we had to use it, and it does just kind of lose it about halfway through. Then they came in and recorded it again in the second or third season to tighten it up a little bit, so that was nice. I thought for sure we were going to get in a lot of trouble with this opening where Giles says, contrary to popular mythology, the world did not begin as a paradise. That's pretty much a dig on Christianity, saying that there's more going on than people know about, and I thought people would object to that. I thought people would object to a lot of things that we were doing on this show. When you get into magic, you get into a very edgy area for a lot of people. But I think people kind of respected its integrity. We never really offended too many people, at least not right away. This is the first of the great library exposition scenes. Poor Tony has had the most work of any actor to do, with extremely long paragraphs about how the world works, what the peril is, what the monster is. He's been such a trooper. He's brought so much to all these really tough speeches, given them life where they had very little because they're just full of information. When we finally blew up the school at the end of season 3 and were in the library for the last time, everybody breathed a great sigh of relief, because these became the bane for us when we were filming of the show, to go back into this space and talk yet again about what the peril was gonna be. Julie Benz playing Darla. Originally, she had been supposed to die. Willow confronts her with holy water at the end of this episode, and as originally written, she croaked. But while we were shooting this, we were working on upcoming stories, and I thought the story for episode 7, when we revealed Angel to be a vampire, when he and Buffy were really starting to fall in love, would be much more interesting if it were a triangle, if we saw some darker side of Angel, somebody who represented a rival for Buffy, who represented his evil leanings, and Julie was doing such a great job for us on these shows that we quickly decided to have her run out in pain rather than die, because we knew we could use her. And even though we did kill her in episode 7, we're coming into season 5 and season 2 of Angel, we're still using her. She's just got a great presence. She brings so much to it. She's so lively. This scene contains what feels like a very sort of TV convention, the idea that they're going to use Jesse as bait rather than kill him. Inevitably, in a horror show, you get into the problem of, why don't they just kill them? When are they going to kill them? They're talking, they're not killing them. And it feels very false. They talk about using Jesse as bait, which appears to be our way around it, but then later on, of course, we see that they have in fact killed him, using him as bait anyway, which is nice. The Master, we kept him trapped in the church for the same reason. The idea that he was stuck down there was so that he was not out for 12 episodes constantly trying to kill Buffy and failing. We knew we wanted them to confront each other in the last episode. We also knew that if for 12 episodes he spent every week going, this time I will destroy Buffy, and she beat him, people would get tired of it really quickly. A lot of time here in the library for this particular episode because we have to set up everything we need to know about vampires and the Slayer and whatnot. Xander makes a comment here asking if they can fly. The answer is no. The answer is no because, of course, we just didn't have the money to make them fly and look good at all. So we picked and chose our vampire lore based on lots of different myths, Dracula, Lost Boys, everything we'd seen. We sort of took whatever we wanted. We kept the idea that a vampire couldn't come in unless they were invited, and that's made things very difficult for us, but has given us some very interesting plot things to work with. We decided early on the Master would never be in normal face because he was so old and so far gone. We made him more animalistic than other vampires. John Vulich, as our makeup guy, does extraordinary work, and his design for the Master was basically a bat. He thought he's devolving to this very demonic animal state, and so he is very bat-like in that respect, although obviously they don't turn into bats on our show because, once again, we can't afford that, and that always looks pretty silly. This scene always sticks out as odd to me just because poor Eric is standing there. I always figured he'd be cowering filthy in a corner and barely able to speak, and they just sort of had him standing up and waiting for it, which kind of cracks me up. The computer, our lover, our demon, our nemesis, our biggest doofy plot thing is the computer. We use it all the time to access things that could never be found on a computer back then, let alone now. It's the element of cheese we can't get around because it just makes life so much easier when you're designing a plot, is to get the information you need on a computer. Coroner's reports, police reports, maps of the sewer system, things that could never be there. We're shameless in that respect. We'd throw anything on there because it just makes life easier. Some shows, X-Files, for example, very much into the realism, the science behind whatever the horror is, explaining it, really justifying it in the world. We are so much more about the emotion resulting from this, not why there might actually be vampires, but how you might actually feel in high school if you had to fight them. And as a result, we tend to gloss over the really intense details about how we might go through procedure, how we might find something, how we might kill something, how something might exist. We tend to say it's on the computer and it's because we're on the Hellmouth and just get away with it. But that doesn't make us bad. This particular day We shot about 12 pages of stuff in this library. Director John Kretschmer plowed through an enormous amount of work, did a really good job not making it all completely static. Usually, when we're shooting a show, we have maybe 6 or 7 pages to shoot. If it's a fight day and we have to do a lot of stunts, maybe 3 or 4 pages. It's still a grueling amount of work. It takes us between 12 and 14 hours usually to shoot a day's work. When we're in the library, the page count tends to go up because they're just going to be talking, but it still can be brutal. We're back at Torrance, where we shot all our high school exteriors. This was just basically another scene designed to reiterate the idea that Buffy wants to fit in and inevitably is going to get in trouble if she actually does the right thing, that she's going to come up against authority no matter what. Coming up is another one of the stunts that we didn't really have the time or the money to do an elaborate stunt, and in this particular case I think it works for us in the sense that you get a sly kind of a filmic trick that is actually a little more interesting than just seeing a great big stunt. That's not a place for it. That's a place where you just want to use the shorthand. This scene was shot towards the end of episode 12, again, with some of the stuff in episode 1. This episode came in short, episode 2, The Harvest. It came in quite a few minutes short, and we needed to make up more scenes to put in it. Later on, I shot this just as a little bit of filler and to get the characters a little bit more in focus, see Xander's attitude and Willow's attitude towards him. This has happened to us a few times when a show will come in too short and we'll need to make up new scenes for it. It's always a great opportunity because you can really look at the final product and say, well, what is it that we need to bolster? What is it that we need to see? What can we accentuate? We're never going to put a scene in that's literally just filler, that's just there to take up space. There's always got to be a reason, and often it helps you make a connection between two things that didn't quite gel yet. So it's actually a good opportunity, although production-wise it's a great big pain. Plus Nikki's hair was a lot shorter, and so we had to really comb it down so that it looked like it matched. Coming up to another Buffy Angel scene, one where we really start to get a feeling that he might have some affection for her, despite their acerbic banter. This chemistry between them was clear pretty much from this point. This was the first thing we shot in the studio, or in the warehouse rather, that we all really had time to work on and really look at. And they have an energy together that's hard to define, but it's very clear and it's very tangible and very gratifying. You know, we had people like David and Nick Brendan who had done virtually nothing before they did these jobs, and putting them up against people like Tony, Sarah, and Allison, who'd been working for over a decade, each of them, and everybody holding their own, everybody coming up to a very intense professional level, and that's very gratifying. Of course, the question of whether or not Angel is standing in sunlight during this scene is one that will haunt us for my entire career. We always try to keep him out of direct sunlight and keep a little direct sunlight in the frame somewhere else so that it's clear there is a hot spot that he's not in. But inevitably, he'll get some little rim of light, or he'll be standing in something that looks like it's glowing, and quite frankly, it looks like he should be burning up, and it's just difficult when you have a vampire that's a good guy and is going to be around during the day. But we try. One of my favorite kind of actors to work with is the one we'll see right now, the rat actor. The rat actor is a good, smart actor, gets it done, knows his lines, hits his mark. We've worked with a lot of rats on this show, and they're always very professional and delightful people to be around. The suspense that's created here has a lot to do, again, with Mike Gershman and his lighting. The blacks that she comes in and out of when she's walking around are very rich and very black, and that's something I hadn't seen a lot of on TV before we did this show. You know, the idea that a frame wasn't always perfectly lit, that you couldn't always see everything that was going on in a show that was a teen show and a comedy on many levels was not quite the norm, but we were always able to get that sort of depth and richness.
Cool. Of course, I don't actually have any of those things.
Good thinking.
We shot all this on location in some tunnels way the hell out somewhere. I don't remember where, but it was a trek, and they went on for miles and miles. Like the computer, the tunnels were a Sunnydale convenience. We knew we were going to have to get from place to place, so we always indicate that tunnels go everywhere. After being on this location, it didn't seem that far-fetched. This is another exposition scene. We spent a long time explaining the rules to people during this show because I wanted them to understand the rules are very important in a horror movie. You can't just make them up. You can't suddenly have Stephen Dorff show up because he's wearing sunscreen in the street. You have to have very specific rules so that when you break them, it means something, and the audience always knows on that level what to expect, even if they don't on a story level. This is our first Book of Thoth. The Book of Thoth is the book that explains everything. Like the computer and the tunnels, one of those rote conveniences that are necessary for this kind of show, and Giles spends much of his time with the Book of Thoth.
No.
Mercedes McNabb playing Harmony, somebody we've also come to again and again throughout the years when we finally made her a vampire in season 4. She's a delight. She plays a very ditzy girl, very funny. She just kept coming back and coming back because we never got tired of her, and we still haven't.
Okay, and then pattern run.
This is one of those little scenes that doesn't register much, but to me is very important just because it's the beginning of Willow's real empowerment. The experience she's gone through, almost being killed by a vampire, gives her just a little bit of an edge, and she actually speaks out against Cordelia. Over the years, Willow's character has blossomed considerably, and she's much more self-assured than she was at this point. And to see the beginnings of that, to see already the effect that her friendship with Buffy is having on her is very sweet. And why is Cordelia hanging out with that guy? I don't think she hangs with that stoner guy that's over there.
Excuse me? Who gave you permission to exist? Do I horn in on your private discussions? No. Why? Because you're boring.
Oh, that I don't talk to you, why? Because you're boring, is another thing that from my life, only actually I'm the person that said it. I thought it was really funny at the time, but the person I said it to was really upset. That sad little autobiographical note is just an indication that the thing that's very important about this show is that we are all Willow and all Cordelia and Buffy and Xander. Cordelia obviously stops being the evil one and becomes a part of the group. That was very deliberate because, one of the things I wanted to say with this high school show is we don't have categories like the nerd, the cool guy, the popular guy. Everything is fluid, everything changes, alliances change. We're all cruel, we're all heroic, we're all everything. That was an example of something from my own life that completely discounts my whole, no, I was the good guy theory. Tried a lot of different things with vampires. Here you have these slow-moving Dawn of the Dead vampires. I think actually some of the scariest vampire images we have are in this scene. As the show went on, they tended to be more just sort of stuntmen hanging out, and we didn't really go for images like this one, which I find genuinely creepy.
I got an idea.
Here you see the eyes sort of reflected. Those were actual reflections bounced into the light on pairs of glasses. They put little reflector eyes on glasses. That's not something we ever did again. We were still experimenting with a lot of different things at this stage. This scene embodies it's really difficult to talk with these fangs in my mouth syndrome. Eric developed a slight lisp during this scene. Didn't really notice it as much with Luke and the Master because they hadn't been normal before. Something poor David Boreanaz has struggled with for many years is being able to talk with those big old teeth in his mouth. See? Perfectly fit, healthy vampires, but they're going real slow.
Up there!
Thought the director, John Kretschmer, did a very good job with that sequence, just really building suspense. He shot this on a skateboard, put the camera on a skateboard to shoot down this tunnel, which I like a lot. Gives it a nice roughness.
He escaped.
Coming up to yet another scene that I had to shoot much later because we were short. Again, a fun opportunity here to come back to the master and get his take on things, sort of keep his character alive. This is also an example both of Mark's charm and wit and an example of how a little implied violence can be a lot more fun and a lot ickier than something actually shown. Back to the library again, and more of what we call phlebotinum. Phlebotinum was a term coined by David Greenwalt when we were trying to work out the mystical reason, the mystical ritual, the thing that would solve the thing. You know, a lot of this stuff is based on myth, a lot of it's based on horror movies, and a lot is, of course, made up for our convenience, because convenience is a beautiful thing. And at one point, when we were trying to figure out exactly what Buffy would be trying to do, Greenwalt just shouted out, "For God's sake, don't touch the phlebotinum in jar C." We have no idea to this day what it was supposed to mean, but it became our word for the vague mystical thing, such as the master is the cork in the bottle kind of theory that we have here. So phlebotinum is our constant on the show. This scene, more on David Greenwalt. He stood beside me while we filmed this scene and whispered in my ear about all the hate mail I was going to get, and that I was going to be targeted by Christian groups for this scene for its satanicness and sort of obvious homoeroticism. Hadn't really meant to go there quite so much, but if you look at it on one level, particularly this frame here, you might misinterpret what's going on. And the show does have a lot of potent sexual metaphors, but this one was a little bit haphazard and by accident. But Greenwalt delighted in telling me about how I was going to be attacked and killed for what I was putting up on the screen here. This was a brilliant idea, to have him write in blood on Luke's forehead. Of course, if we had actually been able to see Luke's forehead in the scene, it might have made it a little more potent.
Worse.
This is, to me, just another example of one of the things that's difficult to do on the show that the actors take care of really well, particularly Nikki in this scene. The idea of saying something that is funny, which he does here.
I don't like vampires. I'm gonna take a stand and say they're not good.
About something that is really tragic, for him to exhibit genuine grief about the death of a friend, and at the same time say something that is actually kind of clever. You know, it's a fine line to walk tonally, and he does a very good job there, and that's something these guys deal with all the time. How to express grief in a way that feels real to them, but might actually be funny to the audience. In the episode where they thought Willow had died, Tony, Nick, and Sarah all had to do that. They all had to play at two levels at once. And as actors, they all have a very great understanding of that. We're talking about people who see the whole picture. There's not one of them that is just about their own performance. They understand where it fits in the context of the story. And that's gratifying, and I'm sad to say kind of rare. And here we go with some more of our great phlebotinum, where they have to defeat the Mercedes symbol for some reason. If I had to count every vaguely triangular symbol that they've had to draw or find in a book or rip off somebody or destroy or whatever, I should go mad and start babbling, much as I am now.
Anyway, that's where Jess is gonna be, trust me.
And we should get there.
This scene kind of just embodies very primally the message of the show, which is the difficulty of being a teenager and the fact that parents can't understand or can't remember how difficult it is. And, we played it with a kind of broad on-the-nose joke, but one that completely registers in terms of mom saying, that's right, if you don't get to go out, the world will end, when of course, in fact, it will, because when you're a teenager, that's how it feels. It feels like it will. We also come at the end of the scene to what is also, I think, one of the most primal images, very simple, says the most about the show, is just the idea that in this trunk we see a very normal girl's life. We see all the things a normal girl might have, and then we see what lies beneath. And that's a literal visual metaphor for the way we feel when we're young. Not that we ever stop feeling like that, but this is adolescence where it hits us the hardest. Coming up on this one more scene, again, that was shot later on because we were short. We were really short, okay? We had to make up a few minutes' time. So we thought it would be a good idea to spend a little time with Cordelia and get to know her and all her delightful superficiality.
Senior boys are the only way to go. And guys from our grade, forget about it. They're children, Like Jesse. Did you see him last night? Following me around like a little puppy dog. You just want to put him to sleep.
Scene originally started right here, with her coming down to dance. And this is where we play a somewhat, perhaps obvious, but for us, potent idea, which is basically that after Jesse has become a vampire, he suddenly has some kind of charisma, no pun intended, some kind of sexual magnetism and sort of experience that makes him completely different than the dork he was 5 minutes ago. Of course, Eric Balfour, very good at playing both sides of that. Again, that's something that just feels extremely real from high school experience, because that confidence, that knowing that you have something is really a lot of what it took to sort of become something more than the dork that we were. It's just that getting that confidence is nearly impossible. Jesse had to die to do it.
Hey, hello.
The pointless flip. We've actually kept those to a minimum on Buffy. I flip across a room I could have walked across that Catwoman is so famous for. I'm not terribly fond of those. Stunts, are a real problem. They're very difficult to shoot, to choreograph, to find something new. Sarah always gives us extremely good footage. She's very good at matching the stunt, putting the energy in it. That's something that, as the show has evolved, have become more elaborate and more exciting. The most important thing, though, is that they don't feel too choreographed, too silly, too lifeless, that there's a brutality in them, that there's a real urgency. Come on. Not that we're completely afraid of silly, like the pool cue gag. This is a little bit of whimsy that I believe was banned in Britain, even though you never see a head. Sorry about the excruciating loser and cited community lines, Jesse. I should have known you were going to have that lisp problem. And the requisite gloating before the actual biting, so that our hero has time to recover. The backwards headbutt, by the way, one of my all-time favorite stunts. It's a classic. Ever since Abel Ferrara's China Girl, I've been in love with it. And here's Julie not dying, as previously written, but taking off to fight another day. Okay, somebody explain to Nick Brendan where the heart is located. I think that would probably help things. This gag, the sunlight that is not gag, I had actually written, and I don't tend to crib from myself that often, but I wrote it for the movie. It was how she was supposed to kill the Paul Reubens character in an early draft. And I thought it was amusing and wanted to bring it back. It works very well with Brian because he's so formidable. And for him to be such a dork is just charming. It's also an example of Buffy being smart and outwitting her opponent as opposed to just being the bimbo with powers. Coming up is the shot where she scares off the vampires. What I said to John Kretschmer, the director, was very simple. Give me the Spielberg. I didn't have to say anything else. He just did it. This was the last of the added scenes, and we were very glad to have it because it brought us back to Angel, and that's a place people turned out to like to be. And his regard for Buffy increasing at the end of the show is a nice place to go off of. Apparently, vampires and people they kill turn to dust since there are no bodies in the frame in that big high and wide. We just thought it wouldn't be as nice if our group sort of, however down they may feel, dealt with their victory around the bodies of the people they failed to save because Buffy was grounded. It felt kind of, unhappy.
Well, I heard it was...
This is your basic summation scene. We find out that people forget everything they need to. Nobody knows what Buffy did, even though they saw it perfectly well. And that there's going to be plenty of other monsters to face besides vampires. It's everything we need to go off. I like the scene a lot just because I think everybody's good in it, and it's nice to have established the group that well and to go off on Giles' statement, the Earth is doomed. It says everything is not perfect. It's a nice little way to go.
The next threat we face may be something quite different. I can hardly wait.
Tony's excitement at all the monsters going to face is always a source of amusement for us. He's always having just a little bit too much fun in the midst of all this direness. Now I think we're coming to what is really the essence, the most beautiful part of the show.
The Earth is doomed.
Me. And now I'll shut up.